Good morning, everyone. We're waiting just a minute to let people filter in from the waiting room, and we'll get started shortly. Good morning to those who are joining. We're waiting just another couple of seconds here to let people filter in from the waiting room, and we'll be getting started shortly. Well, good morning, UC San Diego staff. My name is Bryce Besser, and I'm the chair-elect for the Staff Association. On behalf of the Staff Association and Human Resources, I'd like to welcome you back to another installment of Cabinet Conversations. Cabinet Conversations is a series of conversations with our cabinet members, and it's designed to allow staff the opportunity to get to know them on a more personal level. It also is intended to allow you to hear what our leaders have to say about important topics that are impacting our campus. And one of the things that I love about Cabinet Conversations is it came out of your requests in the Staff at Work survey, our CUCSA engagement survey, and also the Idea Wave campaign that was part of the Staff Association Executive Board strategic plan a couple of years ago. Today's webinar features Jeff Gattas, Associate Chancellor and Chief of Staff. But before we get to that, let's go through a few housekeeping items. So you'll all notice that we're recording today, and the recordings will be up on the Staff Association's website a few days after we're done with our session today. We have received a number of questions leading up to this conversation, and we'll try to do our best to get to as many of them as we can today. For those of you who haven't had a chance to submit questions, you can do so with the question and answer function. We have moderators behind the scenes that are moderating that, and they can forward them over to me, and we'll try to get to them, as many of them as we can today. If we aren't able to get to one, we'll go ahead and save it, and we'll forward it over to the appropriate department for further follow-up. So with that, sorry, just scrolling through my notes here. So with that and the housekeeping, I'd like to welcome Jeff. Jeff, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. For folks that are joining us today, I did want to point out how fortunate the Staff Association is. For those of you who don't know, Jeff Gattas, he meets regularly with Staff Association leadership. So he meets with the chair and the chair-elect of the Staff Association monthly. And we really enjoyed the conversations that we've had and the guidance that he's provided us through the years. So Jeff, I just want to thank you very much for your support of the Staff Association and for taking the time out of your day to talk with us, the staff.
Absolutely. I mean, I look forward to the meetings that we have and the dialogue that we've established between our office and the Staff Association. You guys do great work.
Yeah, thank you. So typically we like to get these things started off by, asking questions so that folks get to know you a little bit better. And one of the first ones I always like to ask is, how have you been doing, and what's the past year been like for you?
Well, that's a very good question. No, I think, first of all, I mean, I've been managing well, just as everybody else is. It's trying times, and you do the best you can with what you have. And, everybody has challenges. You have good days and bad days, but all in all, I think it has been quite an experience for us. I have to say that the last year is something that, I never expected to face. I don't think any of us have. And it has been really a weird kind of a weird way of working through and changing a culture and having to adapt and tackle new things. I mean, with the pandemic and switching to, remote learning and closing the campus and ramping up our health system and doing the super center. I mean, everything within the return to learn package that we've pulled together has been a moment in time. I mean, probably all of us will never go through an experience, hopefully, like this again. And to take a huge, complex organization like UC San Diego and be able to pivot as well as we have, it has been something that has been tremendous to learn from. Even though, like I said, it's not the way we would want to take something on like this, but it has been great in the sense of bringing people together within the UC San Diego community and moving people forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've faced such great challenges. There's also been so many opportunities for folks personally and also professionally, for us and the staff. And so those are some of the conversations that I've been having with a lot of our staff members is, the little things that they've learned about themselves or others, right?
Yeah.
The positives that we've been able to take out of this,
Mm-hmm.
because there have been positives. Sometimes it's difficult to see them, but for
Yeah.
many of us, they're there. We just have to take time to focus on that.
Yeah, I would say too, it's the one of the positives for me in all of this is the level of engagement. I probably interact with more folks on a regular basis that I wouldn't be able to interact with had we not gone into the Zoom world. And it was really expanded, I think, a lot of different levels of participation and allowed people to be more involved than they may not have been able to under a kind of our traditional circumstance. And that has been really a really interesting part of moving forward.
Yeah. So I smile when I ask this question, because I'm sure someone like you is working 24/7. But for those times that you do have some downtime, how have you been spending that time, especially in this time of social distancing?
Oh, yeah, right. Especially when you can't really go do the things that you usually want to do on your downtime. A lot of my downtime is uh, we have a place in the desert, so it's a nice escape just to go to someplace different for us. We're lucky enough to have, like I say, that second place and hang out there and chill with our friends that are there in our own little bubble that we created. But I enjoy binge watching. I enjoy, we've picked up golf. It's crazy, but I've actually like it, which I'm really surprised about. But I mean, little things like that. It really is. We established like a tight pod within our community, and it's how do we kind of manage those relationships through this all, and getting to know those people is kind of how we've been enjoying our time over the last year. I hope I get to travel again. That's one of the things I really like to do. I see that in the future, coming forward with everybody here. And the one thing I'll say I did pick up during the pandemic that I really do enjoy is cooking. To me, it's a complete use of a different part of my brain that has allowed me to experiment and really do some fun things that will continue as I move forward.
Yeah, I love cooking as well. I like cooking with the family. Some days we're able to do that. Other days it's, I'm heating something up, leftover something for the family.
Right.
But definitely be carve out time on the weekends and cook. Cooking's always been big in my family growing up,
Yeah.
and my wife's family as well. So that's definitely something that we like to do as well. And it's
Yeah.
kind of allows you can't travel, but you can kind of travel when you're experimenting with other dishes. So I think it's also fun.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I got these couple cook magazines, I should say, that have, lots of different recipes, and it's just a nice way to unwind and, have a glass of wine and chill out. Makes you not think of work. That's what I like about it.
Right. Exactly. Well, and it is important to turn off from work,
Mhm.
right? And many of us are struggling with that, right?
Yeah.
To be able to balance the work and life. The commute is no longer there for many of us. For those people that are on campus right now and that have gone on campus from day one, ensuring, business operations. We thank you very much for your time and commitment and being on campus. For a lot of folks, we don't have that commute. I walk down the stairs and I'm home. So it's trying to find that balance and carving out time for ourselves so that we remain fresh and that we can continue to be present with our family when we're with them is very important. So whenever we have a chance to speak with, an executive leader like yourself, I have a feeling that many staff are wondering how you got to the level that you're at here on the campus. And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, for a staff member that's, wondering how they might be able to, chart kind of a similar career path. Can you share with us more about your background and your career path and how you got here?
Sure. So my background is in public relations and public affairs. And so I started in working on political campaigns many years ago, like over 20 years ago, and was lucky enough to work in the state assembly for the budget director. I was lucky enough to work for city council and the mayor's office, and an opportunity came at UC San Diego where they needed a director of government relations, and recruited me. I went there, and it started here in 2007. And so I did that for a few years. We went through, if you remember, in 2009-10, we had to do a lot of reorganization and restructuring at the university because of budget cuts. And one of the, as part of that, one of the areas I took over and added to my portfolio was university communications. So from about 2009-ish, I want to say, 2010 till 2017, I was executive director of university communications and public affairs. So I maintained the government relations portfolio, but added the communications portfolio to my world. And then in 2017, with the retirement of my boss, Claire Christofko, she was chief of staff to the chancellor. That position opened up, and I was able to move to that position. And so that's how I got to where I am now. Now, the skills that I've worked with and what I learned over the years is in working with elected officials, and I'm working in campaigns. I was both the chief of staff previously and a district director and a press secretary and a policy advisor. And I think what allowed me to kind of grow into this position is that you develop a skill of learning a lot of different things really quickly, and you become able to understand how different constituents are coming at different angles, and how you can kind of strategically move through some of those areas. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of you get out there and you're going to make mistakes, especially because things move quickly, but that's okay. And you learn how to adjust, regroup, and kind of move forward. It's kind of funny because I look at everything, I guess it's because of my background in campaigns, as kind of a mini campaign. Like, say, what is our goal? Who are we trying to reach out to? Who do we need to talk to? And who do we need to engage to make that happen? And it's kind of pulling all those things together and hopefully getting into a place that allows us, to make a good decision for whomever I'm working for. So that's kind of how I maneuvered to where I am today. I never thought I'd be at the university this long. I guess I've been fortunate enough that I've advanced in 3 different careers here at the university, and I'm hopeful that I can stay here till I decide not to have a career anymore, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I think for me, it's always, I think we're always fortunate when we're able to hear from folks like yourself, sharing more about your career trajectory, excuse me. And one of the things that I think has always been a constant, at least from the things that I've heard, is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Those are the times when you're going to grow the most.
Yeah.
And even though you might be anxious or afraid, to try to be comfortable with that feeling, because there are times when you will make a mistake.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, that's an excellent point, Bryce, because I think about, um, you know, my background in my family background is in was the restaurant and bar business. So I've always worked in some capacity in the service industry growing up and putting myself through college and doing those even after college, pick it up. So you're always kind of on and kind of running. You kind of learn that skill there. And I've always been hesitant. I've never been hesitant about trying something new and different. When I graduated, uh, a friend of mine who was in my program was an editor of snowboarding and a skateboarding magazine. And he asked me to come on board and be the marketing kind of director for skateboarding and a snowboarding magazine. And I told him, I'm like, sure, but I know zero about either of those. I have never even snowboarded. And he's like, well, we'll change that. He goes, but I know you have the skill set that you can adapt to the industry that you're in. And that's really what it's about is developing those skill sets that allow you to kind of bounce between these different places and adapt quickly. I mean, I never worked in government before I was in government. I never worked in higher ed before I worked in higher ed, but I know that I had the skill set and capacities that allowed me to be adaptive. And again, and not being afraid to take that risk, because with risk, there's failure, but there's also great success. So how do you kind of get to that point?
Yeah, well said. So shifting gears a little bit, it's Women's History Month. And so I wanted to ask you a question. Is there a story that you could share with us about a woman you admire? And also kind of a second part of that question is, can you tell us a little bit more about how the campus is, or what the campus is doing to support more female leaders?
Sure. Well, I come from a large family on both sides. Between the two families, I have 7 aunts that raised me in many ways. I was fortunate to know both of my grandmothers and 2 of my great grandmothers. So we lived in a multi-generational household of very strong women. Yeah, I have like 2 uncles, and everybody else is women. So I learned a great deal and respect everything that I gathered from them. And actually, many of my first experiences I worked for were women bosses, and I worked for Denise Duchenne, who was chair of the California Assembly Budget Committee. And then I was lucky enough to be now Senate Pro Tem Toni Atkins, her first chief of staff when she was first elected to city council. And what I learned from all of these folks is that women bring a different, I feel women bring a different way of looking at problems and situations that as a man, I may not consider. And what that did is it allowed me to learn from them and learn to take in different perspectives, and really allowed me to kind of expand my knowledge, and making sure that I take in very broad perspectives. And so that has been one of the things that I've been really fortunate working for very strong women, very passionate women, and then also being raised by a group that's very supportive. And to me, that's really helped me a great deal into where I am today. From the campus perspective, I think the chancellor and the administration has really focused on trying to raise the gender equity here on campus and make sure that we have women in campus leadership roles. The 60, over 60% of the chancellor's cabinet is women, and he's hired all those to come here. There were no women deans before the chancellor was here, and now we have, I believe almost half of them are women deans. But it's also hiring women faculty, promoting women staff. At the university, the majority of the staff are women, and the majority of, I believe, the staff in some of the the management roles that we're looking at are going to women. And it's, so how do we continue to nurture that and develop that? Because it's really important that we do have that, that women are represented broadly and equally at all levels of the university. And I think that we have to put programs in place that encourage that and develop that and actually make it happen.
I couldn't agree more. I think that this month especially, I've been very pleased with the wide variety of Women's History Month programming that's been available. So for staff that haven't had a chance to check that out, go onto the UC San Diego website, and there's the whole list of events that you can participate in.
Yeah.
So kind of switching gears back to about your role on campus, can you kind of explain the Associate Chancellor versus the Chief of Staff hat? What exactly can you share with us about that? And also for me, it's always helpful if I know a little bit more about what a typical day is like. So can you share with us what a typical day might be like for you?
Okay. Well, I can't separate the Associate Chancellor and Chief of Staff because it's kind of one and the same, right? But as the Chief of Staff, I believe my primary role is to ensure that the chancellor's programs, the university's programs, the strategies that we're implementing across the university and the health system are moving forward. So, as I like to say, I know a little bit about a lot of things. And so what I have to do is make sure that those things are getting are being executed fully. Because if you think about UC San Diego and you think about all the vice chancellor areas, and you think about there's scripts, there's SIO, there's the hospital, there's athletics, there's housing, there's police, there's everything here. It's a small city. So it's how do you kind of move everyone forward in a way that moves the institution forward when you have so many disparate opinions and jobs and duties. And so part of what I believe I'm here to do is make sure that at the leadership level, that the institutional strategies, the priorities of the chancellor, the programs that we're implementing are executed in a way that, again, moves the institution forward. Working mostly with leadership across many different ways, with, like I say, staff leadership, academic leadership, and then administrative leadership to make sure that that happens. So the part that my typical day is very atypical in that sense is that, I have to be responsive to crisis. I have to be, again, kind of making sure things are popping in. It's kind of like I'm a traffic manager. So issues come in, people come in, constituents have things that need done, and I want to make sure it goes to the right people to get addressed and that it gets addressed. So I think that's kind of how my day starts. What's on my calendar may not be what's going to happen for the day, but that's the part I like.
Yeah. I definitely, the longer I've been on campus, the more I've seen my calendars taking those turns as well, right? Whereas before, when I first started here, I would come in and I would have my set schedule and I would be able to say, here are the 5, 6, 7 things on my to-do list, and I'd be able to knock those out. And certainly with last year, being in risk management, there's just been so many things coming from all different angles. And so really do have to be nimble, have to be very patient, give myself grace, because there are some things that maybe I had on my list that now I just can't get to today. And I have to be open with folks and say, hey, I'm still working on this issue for you. And I'll get it to you, is this date okay? So it's just being kind of open with folks. And so thank you so much for sharing a little bit more. I figured that your day is atypical and there's a lot that goes on. It's packed in the day. But I always like to ask that question because for me, if I can kind of picture myself in the role, like what would my typical day be like in that role? I can better kind of understand, the things that you're facing each day and the issues that you're tackling. So I appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit more about that. So you mentioned that, one of the areas that you oversee is campus communications. And so recently that group has kind of gone through a restructuring. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and perhaps some of the benefits or some of the pros that we're seeing from that restructuring?
Sure. So to me, this is a huge step for a university of our caliber. So we, about a year ago, hired Ann Buckley as our Chief Communications and Marketing Officer. And we had never had that type of position of it at the university. At a senior level cabinet position that was solely in charge of the institutional visibility and reputational building across the board. So not just campus, but campus, Scripps, athletics, UC San Diego Health, the health system. Really taking a comprehensive approach to what is UC San Diego. And, until you're able to kind of align all of those and build on the brand and develop a brand reputation that you can pull together and like I say, kind of go one step up each time, is you're always going to be kind of caught behind. And we know that UC San Diego does great things. And so it's how do we leverage that in a way that allows everybody else to know? Because we know that reputation, distinction, prestige are the drivers of the things that that will bring people here. So our prestige in research that we're doing, brings great researchers, great students here. The work we're doing at the health system. The patient care aspects, we're leading in many different ways in this country and internationally. Scripps is premier as it relates to earth and ocean sciences. So it's how do we take what's uniquely San Diego and bundle it and communicate it to broad constituencies, internationally, nationally, regionally, and even locally. So that they understand the impacts of what a university means. And until we were able to kind of bring that together within a department that was aligned, we were missing opportunities. And so having Ann here and now having a team, a leadership team that is coordinated and reporting to her as it relates to communications, marketing, and branding is a huge step for us. And I think you see it on everything that you do. I mean, with your background, you have, Bryce, you're using the logo and the color points and the images. And once you start to develop that consistency, people then recognize it. You're able to build messaging, communications, awareness around it. So that alignment is key to building a large institution and giving it a single voice that allows it to break through all the other voices that are out there.
Yeah, I've had a chance to meet Ann. She meets regularly with the chair-elect and myself. I'm really excited that she's here on campus, just a very genuine person. And for those that are listening in right now, Ann is actually going to be a guest for one of our future cabinet conversations. So you're in for a treat there. She'll be able to talk more about the communications plan. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, she's been able to pull together a great strategic communications plan just within this year. And I'll say, when you talk with her, it'll be interesting to ask, because I think we hired her when she moved here from Alabama. And she was on campus for, I think, 1 or 2 weeks, and then went to COVID. It has not been to campus since. So she's been onboarding a major organization within a major department within a major organization without actually not even being on campus, which I bet she has a unique perspective on that.
Yeah, no, I do recall having conversations about that. Yeah. So pivoting again to kind of a different topic here. um, but very important one. So UC San Diego most recently has released a number of statements condemning the anti-Black, xenophobic, and other acts of hatred that we've seen in our nation. In what ways is the university looking to continue to move the needle when it comes to fighting systemic racism?
Uh, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I think universities, especially our university, needs to be at the forefront of doing that. Um, you know, I feel that the leadership, the chancellor, and the cabinet, having been in some of these meetings and discussions about uh, the anti-racism and other issues that you've pointed out, that we are united in the sense of we want to take proactive measures around this and really look at systematic change. You know, a lot of times people talk about, what's not getting done or what we could do better, or we implement something that's a one-off. And I think through the cabinet, through Becky Pettit, our VCEDI, and through the strong support and passion of the chancellor on this issue, on these issues, is that we're actually making systematic changes at the university as it relates to making sure that we're attacking anti-bias and anti-racism and equity for all of these folks. You know, a couple of the programs, if you look at even as it relates across the board to engagement and activity as it relates to staff engagement, really listening to some of our folks that have been marginalized is important. And, the chancellor has met with the Black Staff Association to hear their issues and concerns and how we can, like, again, systematically make some of these changes happen, whether it's our recruitment programs that we're looking at for faculty and staff, our recruitment and outreach programs for students, and making sure that that they reflect the community that we're in. Are we looking at developing programs so people can learn about these, or developing study areas? So it's how do we holistically move past just one or two things and develop systems? And I think Becky Pettit and the VC and her department in developing some of the critical checks that she's put together about how departments are doing as it relates to implementing programs or hiring folks that are underrepresented and are not in these roles is key to changing what we look at. I also think that you have to be able to give voice to people. And there's no better place to do that than at a university. You may not agree with what everybody says, but you have to allow people to say it, and you have to be willing to listen. Just because they may be saying something different than what you are, and you may never agree with them, and they may be off, but you still have to listen and allow those tough conversations to happen. Because I think you'll find new perspective in a lot of it. But it's a tough situation right now, and it's how do we again kind of jump in front of it and not let us not fall back into complacency.
Yeah, I think the one thing thank you so much for your comments there. One of the things that I heard that I wanted to highlight was, the thing that you mentioned kind of at the end, where really what I think is missing these days is the ability for folks to have a civil discourse. We might not agree with each other, but at least I can sit down and I can talk to you, give you my opinions, you give me your opinions. Perhaps we might be able to find some common ground, but we will never really agree, and that's okay, but we're civil, right? We're not just shutting each other off or shutting each other out. And I think that that's really one of the things that's severely missing these days when it comes to our communications with each other. And so my hope is that in some ways, we're going to be able to push through that, right, and lead by example here on the campus to where we can start having these conversations again, right, where it's not just you're canceled. We're going to have a conversation and we can actually have a dialogue and something good will come of it. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing with us a little bit of more information on that. I do want to point out from the Staff Association side the support that Chancellor and others, CFO's office, HR, for example, and VCEDI have shown support for the Staff Association and supporting a number of things that the Black Staff Association has done, for example, in this space with speakers, including funding and marketing support. So really do appreciate the continued support there and want to say thank you. The next question that I have was actually submitted by a staff member. And so I think, we've seen that our numbers when it comes to enrollment, we've been fortunate. They've stayed the same and actually have increased right over the past year, which is phenomenal. So with enrollment continuing to increase and that having an impact on the workload to staff members that are supporting departments and units, researchers, our faculty, et cetera, what are the plans for increasing personnel or staff headcount here on campus?
Well, I mean, that's a fair question in the sense that as the student body grows, we know that they have to have the student support. I mean, the support to be successful. And when those begin to mismatch, to speak, is we know we're not delivering the best education that we can to the students that are coming here. And so how do you adjust? Part of the issue has always been, it is always resources, right? The state continues to fund us at a level that's subpar to the needs that we have with some of the mandates that come in. We're continue to accept students maybe at a rate that we would a little bit higher than we would anticipate doing. So I think we have to work through that. And I think obviously the pandemic has thrown a curve into some of the growth that we're looking at and has limited some of the resources that have come in. But as we move past that, I think you'll see that there's going to have to be a reassessment of what the needs are and how we're doing it and how we support that as it relates to services and staff and what that looks like. I mean, I to be honest, I don't know. I can't give you a number of any sort, but it is something that we're well aware of, and we see the stresses, and we know that people are working hard, and we know that the pandemic hasn't helped with any of that. And so it's as we move into this next phase and move out of the pandemic, we're going to have to obviously look at what work looks like and we are actually started that conversation of what work looks like and how are we going to kind of meet the needs of the institution.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being transparent with us and saying, well, that you don't know. I mean, we don't have everything figured out, but also being able to speak to it a little bit. I appreciate the candor there. I think it's important for us to be able to hear the information that you might have. And also if we don't have it all figured out, we don't have it all figured out. And so I appreciate, that transparency.
Yeah.
This
well,
dovetails
Bryce,
nice. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're part of those conversations that we're having, which is great too, is again, as I alluded to earlier, the inclusivity of the groups of people now that are part of this conversation is much broader. And I think that's been helpful as we kind of look at what work will look like in the fall. I mean, really, that's what we have to think about is what is the fall, knowing that we're going to work through the summer to kind of maybe make and implement some of these changes and what that looks like. And it really is a work in progress. And I want folks to know that that the anxiety that you feel is probably natural, but at the same time, we don't have all the answers for you yet. And it's been very fluid. And that's one thing I've learned during this pandemic is you have to be ready to move in different directions a little more quickly. And we don't have all the answers and everything may not be perfect as we would hope it to be, but it's again, keep that broad, focused, strategic look of what's best for the institution and we'll get there.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's comforted me in a lot of ways is, being the chair of the staff association, I am fortunate enough to have been part of, one of the return to learn work groups that's looking at reimagining, the workplace, right? What's it going to look like? And so for me, what's been comforting is the level to which the university is looking at this issue from multiple angles. And even though we might not have everything figured out, the fact that we've got a lot of great minds that are looking at this from all those different angles, a lot of good is going to come from it. And this kind of dovetails nicely into the next topic that I had. And I actually just saw this morning the Chancellor had released a new note about ramping up on campus operations in the fall. And for those that have been tuning into the staff town halls and also seeing Nancy Resnick's regular updates from the CHRO, and then today seeing the Chancellor's announcement, we've seen that remote work for many people will continue until May 31st. With the plan to move to larger in-person instruction in the fall, I don't think that we have a lot of information at this point, but I mean, is there anything else that you can share with us about what staff can expect when it comes to continued remote work opportunities in the future?
I can tell you that we are looking at that and what that may look like. I can tell you that we know that there is a desire from staff that we should be looking at some hybrid models, but we also know that there's some staff that don't want to be at home. We also know that there's staff that don't want to be on campus. So, but we also know that probably both of those probably don't work. So what is it going to look like as we kind of move forward through this? I would say that come June 1st, we're not just going to turn on a light switch and everybody's going to be all back. In fact, that's not going to happen. In fact, what I would say to staff is really just talk with your supervisors, and they're going to give you the cues about what is going to look like. We're hopeful that we can work through some of these to give you more information from the administration, prior to May 31st. And we're really concentrating on that because we know you have to plan your lives. And we know that everybody has different parameters that they're working in. But I think just be patient with us. We're going to give you the information as soon as we have it. I know it's stressful, but keep engaged with your supervisors and your area that you're in, because these decisions will be probably coming down through various VC areas. They may be starting to trickle out depending on how you are working in the university, what your operation is. So again, it's patience. It's pay attention to the communications that's coming out. And we do understand that it is frustrating to not have all the answers.
Yeah, and I did want to emphasize, I'm mindful of our time, so we're getting close to the 10:45 mark. We might run just a little bit past that if that's okay, Jeff.
Sure.
But I'll try to get us to end as close to that as we can. I only have 2 more questions for you. But
Okay.
I did want to make another comment. I believe more of this will come out in the next staff town hall. So for those of you who haven't already registered for staff town hall that's coming up, please do so. There's been a lot of focus on the remote work, right? For those that are working remotely. There's also been a lot of focus on the staff members that have never left campus, right? Those that have been, again, maintaining operations, mission critical things in our facilities, custodial, right? Our HDH, our Emergency Operations Center and Environment, Health and Safety folks, right? The list goes on.
And the hospital.
I was going to just say our health system. So, there's also an emphasis on equity and flexibility with that as well. So, we're again looking at it from all those different angles. I think it's important for staff to hear that. So stay tuned for more of that, because I believe that there will be more information to share in the coming days and weeks in the staff town hall. So the last 2 questions that I have for you, I think will end us off hopefully on a nice uplifting note. I always try to leave people with some positive things with these. And again, for those of you who submitted questions and we haven't had a chance to get to them, we'll go ahead and save those, and we'll either get those out to Jeff's office or to the other appropriate office to hopefully have follow-up on that. So for staff that are struggling right now with balancing their work and their family life, caregiver responsibilities, frankly, might just be very fatigued, right? Because of everything that 2020 has thrown at them. What advice can you give for someone that's in that position right now?
Yeah, man, that is a good question because everybody's circumstance is so different. I mean, I don't know how I put myself in other people's situation because everybody is so unique in what they're doing. But I guess what I would say to folks from an institution, from UC San Diego, is that you should know that the institution appreciates what you're doing. We know that the work you're doing is harder. We know that there are tough times that you've been through and are still probably struggling through. And it's important that you understand that there is that flexibility around what you're doing. There are services if you need them. You should take advantage of them. But at the same time, you should take the time to take care of yourself. And that is probably what I have found to be the hardest part of the pandemic, is that taking the time to take care of yourself. Really allow yourself to do that. And I think you can we're going to get through this. We're going to get to a place that is, I'm not going to say as it was, because it will never be at that place, but it will get to a place that feels like we're no longer in this limbo land, so to speak. So really do just really take the time.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's a number of resources that staff can tap into, whether it's our faculty and staff assistance program or a number of other resources that are on Blink with the health and wellness area. Jeff, you mentioned kind of your pod. For me, it's been able to have the family members, right, that are coming in. I'm fortunate I have my mom and my mother-in-law that are helping me with caregiving responsibilities, take care of the kids during the day. Having them be in the house has helped. But also being able to kind of have a closer group of friends that I'm able to see every now and then has also helped as well. So yeah. I really do hope, and I have my fingers crossed for staff that they're able to actually experience that as well. And I would just say that if anybody is struggling, to reach out to someone and ask for help. That might be the
Absolutely.
hardest thing to do. But once that ask is there, you'll find that there are a number of people that are feeling the same as you, and you're not alone. So I think it's really important to emphasize that. Jeff, final question for you. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you're excited for about this year, but can you tell us maybe what you're most excited about for 2021?
I really am most excited to kind of get back to the campus and get all of the projects and good programs and everything that we've been working on fully activated. I mean, in being able to see my colleagues, being able to, kind of get out of my condo in a way that allows us to interact. And so I am most hopeful that I can see there's an end to this, and that it's within reach, and that we'll be able to kind of get out there and live our lives again more freely as we've expected to do.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
Hey, thank you.
I'm sure we could talk a lot more. We do appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. That is all the time that we have for today. Yep. So I do want to thank you again for speaking with us. I also want to thank everyone who's joined in the conversation today and the other cabinet conversations that we've put together. Again, if we weren't able to get to one of your questions, there were a number of them submitted. We will save them. We'll forward them to the appropriate department for follow-up. The Cabinet Conversations team is continuing to plan the next set of these cabinet conversations, and so please keep an eye out for additional details on who we'll be talking with next. You can also view the prior cabinet conversations on the Staff Association's website. It's staffassociation.ucsd.edu, and we'll put this one up as well shortly. It'll be up in the next few days. So until next time, I want to thank all staff for all you're doing for each other as well as the university, and be well. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.